Beatrice, Subaru, this was a mistake, in fact. He'd felt relieved for evading the crisis of the moment, but, instantaneously, Beatrice rejected that relief. Looking at the young girl at his chest, wondering what had happened, she cleared away the fallen, fluttering petals with a troubled expression, and surveyed the rear. Beatrice, from the one just now, the dragon carriage on the other side has gone astray, I suppose. There is only Betty and you. Subaru, what did you say? Pursuing her gaze in panic, Subaru confirmed the absence of the figure of the dragon carriage in the surroundings. Only the distant radiance of bluish-white mana and roars of witch beasts. Furthermore, discovering a place slightly exposed to the sandy gale, he was able to understand from his view through the immense distance, the hard fight being put up by Amelia and their new servant, Melee. However, even if they tried to meet up with the other side, the space between them was overflowing with a countless number of courtesan bears. And for Subaru and the rest, with diminished number of moves, there were no indications that the fierce attack of the witch beasts had been weakened. Subaru, simply, half the war potential. The number of enemies are double. Beatrice, compared to earlier, it has increased to 4 times, I suppose. Brandishing the claws, at the face of the courtesan bears attacking, the cusp of the whip let out a roar. The striking impact, fortunately, crushed the eyes of the witch beast, and breaking through the one trembling in violent pain, Patrisk dashed once again. However, that course of direction had a different direction than that of the dragon carriage of Amelia and the others. Subaru, Patrisk. Not this way. Beatrice, it is this ground dragon's own judgment to be left alive, in fact. Rather than Subaru or Betty, leaving it to its instincts would be better, I suppose. Interrupting Subaru's outcry, Beatrice kicked and dispersed away the witch beasts standing in their way with magic. Patrisk marked the points where the tight besiegement and broke through them, risking her own life for protecting the two on its back. Subaru, shit. This again. This shape again. What am I doing? Swinging the whip, he struck the faces of the witch beasts trying to get closer. However, with this, he would not be able to stop the power of the witch beasts, having an expression of having lost reason. Inflicting fatal wounds with the saber, he sharpened their dynamism with magic. The power Subaru chose, even with any of those, it would not be even remotely attainable. All craftiness would get crushed under the pressure of overwhelming power. Doing what he could do, augmenting whatever he had the ability to do, it had become slightly easier, is what he had thought, and yet. The mere superficial cleverness of Natsuki Subaru, was fate only going to exhale a laughing sigh at it and trample upon and crush it. Subaru, I had somehow managed better at the time of that shitty bastard Regulus. Beatrice, there is no time for such deep thinking, in fact. Are there any ways to, Subaru, Biko, Murik on Patrisk? Lighten her weight, then we can cross over the swarm. Beatrice. Murik. Accepting Subaru's directions, Beatrice used Murik on Patrisk, a magic that abets the effect of gravity, and the speed at which they ran further accelerated. Stepping and racing ahead, the distance doubled, and the leaping Patrisk used the witch beasts as a place to stand on, and tried to withdraw from the writhing flower meadow. But Subaru, the Lee. In close proximity to his eyes appeared a white purge, and the moment he turned his voice inside out, that dashed through the sky. The white purge above ground ran through, and the sand sea was blown off by the terrific force. Facing the swift bolt of the purge, the bodies of the witch beasts were torn apart, spouting out blood, as they leapt. And that aftermath swooped down upon Patrisk as well, agitated by the wind pressure of that which was closing on the large build of the ground dragon, and got easily flipped. Subaru, Beatrice. Hold tight. Beatrice, Subaru too, make sure you're hugging firmly, I suppose. Patrisk, HK. Patrisk neighed, and Subaru hugged and clung to Beatrice's body. Spinning and revolving in the air, the large build of Patrisk pranced overhead of the courtesan bears. As if pursuing that Patrisk, the corona continuously downpoured incessantly. The sand was burst open, the witch beasts who got dragged into it and had to receive it were burst open, and the appearing and quickly disappearing Patrisk raised an echo of distress. Subaru, OAAAAH. In the midst of the attack, the divine protection of wind evasion failed, and Subaru tasted that impact altogether. Grasping the reins and Beatrice, he had firmly interposed both his feet in Patrisk's saddle, but, rubbed by the force, with his body being struck hard in parts here and there, he barely managed to grasp to his consciousness. However, regardless of even that state, the pursuit of the claws of the courtesan bears under his eyes continued to shoot. Swallowed in the terrific attack, he floundered without being thrown off. Now, if he were to fall, no way would he be saved. What barely connected his life, was precisely because he had not given up. Subaru, but, at this rate Beatrice, not good, in fact, HK. Subaru, Patrisk. With the remarkably strong impact, Patrisk's roar of anguish pulled back her tall tail. Looking at it, at the side of Patrisk, who was flipping around lightly through the effect of Muruk, had been exposed to the claws of the courtesan bears and had been slashed. With the scars of the claws etched into the jet-black scales, painful to even look at, from the mouth of the deep gash flowing and spilling was fresh blood. Subaru, KH. Tumbling down with the same pace due to that force, Patrisk suddenly fell on top of the desert. At the same time, Subaru and the others were thrown onto the sandy soil as well, and were left behind on the feeding ground of the courtesan bears crowding their surroundings. Shaking his head, his body rose. While continuing to hold Beatrice's hand, she, too, dusted off the hem of her dress and stood up, and quickly observed the surroundings with no negligence in her eyes. However, their advantage was undeniable. Subaru, you bastards! Don't you dare lay a single finger on Patrisk. Beatrice, Minya. Wounded, Patrisk groaned in agony, as magic pierced through the witch beasts flooding towards it. Subaru pulled Beatrice's hand and rushed over to Patrisk, and kneeling down, touched the wound. The claws had not reached her intestines, but, if she pushed herself, her guts might brim out. She could not be allowed to push herself. He also needed time to heal it. Subaru, Beatrice. Shamak. Deceive the perceptibility of the witch beasts around. Beatrice, now? Even if that's done, it'll do nothing but buy time, in fact. On top of that, Subaru, that time is needed for now. Hurry. Bending their stance with bloodshot eyes, the witch beasts awaited for a gap to swoop in. Coping with them would be impossible if they assailed from all directions. The witch beasts eventually became impertinent, and what would be their cue depended on their patience. That could perhaps not be expected. Beatrice, HK. L. Shamak. Beatrice joined both of her hands together, and something entirely fell out of Subaru's interior. It rolled towards the whirlpool within the hand of the girl beside, becoming quiet power. It swept through the sand sea, and with Subaru and the rest as the center, tens of meters in its radius, were wrapped up in black mist. With the foundation of shadow magic, this was the invocation of Shamak. Producing discord in perception, the expanse of Shamak brought the courtesan bear's conduct to a standstill. Conception vanished beyond understanding, and even the instinct to chase after prey gets forgotten. Of course, it did not show effect on Subaru and the others, who had executed it. However, it did not last long. Beatrice, if the ones beyond the scope of efficacy get in, it would eventually be laid to waste, I suppose. Before that, escape along with that ground dragon. Subaru, I know. The effect of Muruk is still left, right? If that's so, then I'll carry Patrisk on my shoulders. At any rate, continuously fire Shamak and joining up with the dragon carriage on the other side is what we should. Withdrawing from the gambling room, judging to prioritize that, he extended his hands to Patrisk. Normally its large frame would weigh several hundred kilos, but in the interval it was adhering to Beatrice's Muruk. That body, like a feather would be an exaggeration, it had become light. Not enough to be able to shoulder it and run. Her yellow eyes were intently looking at Subaru. The emotions passing by in those eyes were complex, eloquence such that nobody could ever imagine being a ground dragon's expression. Those eyes were telling them, "Please leave." Beatrice, Subaru. Immediately after his eyes were robbed by the glint in Patrisk's eyes, Beatrice raised a sharp voice. She, rushing over, aimed for Subaru's palm. The surging magical power took form of a shield, and right next to Subaru arrived a magical wall of violet in it, averted the fired white luster. Subaru, go ah! Reverberated the sharp sound as if an exchange of blows of steel, and Subaru's body, receiving the impact, flew backwards. Tumbling over and falling with limbs stretched out on top of the sand, the violently coughing Subaru noticed after trying to lift his body up. Blood was dripping out of his right side, which had suffered the impact, and that it had his right leg thickly soaking. Subaru, what did I receive? Grasping the side overflowing with blood, exhaled Subaru reflexively with one of knees knelt down. At that moment, the impact which had ransacked his internal organs gives rise to vomiting, and gastric juices and blood ceaselessly gushed forth out of the edge of his mouth. Air exited out of his fissured abdomen, and a goofy sound like that of fart leaked out along with the foaming blood. Subaru, HF, Beatrice, Baru. Subaru. As he exhaled hoarsely, his field of vision simultaneously inclined right beside him. Toppling sideways, he understood he had lost the ability to move his body. He had understood, but nothing more than that could he continue. The wound on his side heated up, and there lay the pain as if his body was melting away. Desperately, he heard the voice calling for his self. Beatrice, Subaru. Subaru, don't I suppose. Dying is. Don't die. Don't leave Betty alone, HK. Stopy, HK. His shoulder was being shook. At the audible tearful voice, he wanted to stretch his hand out, but he could not move. His brain tissues were burning, he became unable to remember the young girl in front of his eyes. An adorable face, but it was crying. She shouldn't make a crying face, is what he thought. On the other side of that, a large lizard lay collapsed. Black, it was a lizard with a beautiful appearance. In that body, a white long and narrow something of an unknown source, unknown origin was lunging through, with no movement whatsoever. It was clearly dead. Perhaps, his own self had received the same thing, is what he thought. Don't leave Betty behind, please, HK. Sobbing, the young girl desperately hugged Subaru's body. With that petite frame, Subaru's body, who had lost his strength, would be too heavy. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He wanted to at least wipe away those tears. He searched for a part that was still mobile in his body, but he was unable to find anything. That is why, he hauled something mobile from someplace else, not in his body. Subaru, HK, Subaru. Invisible to the eyes, the hand only his self could see, wiped the tears on her cheeks. Black fingers caressed her teardrops, and the girl looked at him, making an expression as if she had noticed something. The strength to smile and reassure her, even that, he did not possess. For a single moment, the young girl tried to say something. However, that was interrupted by the white purge that came flying behind her from a distance. The second attack lunged through Subaru's chest. Slowly turning his gaze towards that, it had perforated through the back of the young girl. Furthermore, piercing through Subaru's chest, it came out from behind, leaving behind a dusky sigh. The form of the young girl, hugging Subaru, disappeared. As if she did not belong to this realm, the form of the young girl was rendered invisible. Losing support, Subaru collapsed on the spot. He could not move. He did not have the reason to move. Subaru, KHO. His weakly moving fingers scratched the sand, that was all. Losing its caster, the black fog which was interposing the environs and space, was dispersed by the breeze. Divulging from the magic that deceived perception, all what remained was only the corpse of a ground dragon and a young boy on the verge of death. The flock sloth of which beasts slurped on their tongues, and advanced closer to that prey. His breath stopped, the focus of his eyes blurred. Excessive blood loss was not how it felt. Something, which felt fatal, poured upon him. He was rendered unable to understand anything. In close proximity to him, the courtesan bears, with their claws sharpened right overhead, he could hear their roars. Those claws had swung down, and his cranium had been crushed. Or instead, now, on the edge of his field of vision, which was on the verge of vanishing, that, which had faintly shined, was the one to blame. Despite not knowing which one of the two was the reason, Natsuki Subaru's life came to an end. 16 Thoughts on Arc 6, Chapter 11, The Audible Tearful Voice. Background Citizen Number 14 says. August 26, 2019 at 6:41 p.m. Thanks for the chapter. God, this fucking chapter hits hard. Poor Biko QQ. Also screw you guys for using that picture and tearing out my heart QQ. Anyways, hope you guys don't burn yourself out with the remaining chapters. See you next time. Reply. Vlad says. August 26, 2019 at 11:12 p.m. My gratitude you have for this chapter which satiates my thirst for ReZero, all my brain trembles. Thanks. Reply. Terminator 244 says. August 29, 2019 at 9:31 p.m. Thanks for the chapter. Poor Subaru, poor Beatrice. D. Reply. Anonymous says. August 30th, 2019 at 4:20 p.m. 10 out of fricking 10. Reply. Anonymous says. September 2nd, 2019 at 5:23 a.m. Thank you so much. Reply. King Explosion Murderer says. February 4th, 2020 at 4:16 p.m. Fuck Ram and fuck you all, if you think Amelia isn't the best girl after witnessing her unconditional faith in Subaru's judgment. Reply. Garfield Hates Mondays says. September 1st, 2020 at 5:23 a.m. Sorry but I can't convince myself to think the reincarnation of Sadala is best girl. Ram for life my guy. Reply. Corrado says. April 5, 2020 at 4 p.m. Great work translating. Question time. Why do Subaru has no way of using Lionheart? Reply. Anonymous says. April 30, 2020 at 9:36 a.m. I think because he has to pass it to someone else instead of himself to make him stop time for himself and they will notice if he does etc. Reply. Akhenaten says. August 8, 2020 at 8:02 p.m. Depends because they clarified that Regulus passed it to his wives without a specific mechanism. In this case it would work magnificently if he assumed he shared his heart with Beatrice at the very least. Then he could just hold on to everyone else and move along, extending his protection to them like Regulus did to Amelia against Sirius. However, that would be a serious problem if he were to share his heart with someone and then find himself in an unfavorable situation, because then everybody would die and he would be stuck being invulnerable and unable to use return by death. Reply. Yosha says. May 15, 2020 at 3:15 p.m. Subaru, I'll be Bassi. Reply. Akhenaten says. August 8, 2020 at 7:54 p.m. I don't understand how dumb this crew can be. I mean, they did prepare for some of the trials on the journey, but they already knew that the sage attacks whoever approaches from the side of the waterfalls. Is it too much of a leap to assume that everyone who gets close will be attacked? Why does Ram of all people just ignore that and says to just head straight for the tower? Aside from that, a new opportunity has arisen to once again shit on Subaru for not spending time to learn how to use the unseen hand ability, so he may stop being so goddamn useless in these situations. Instead he decided to take a whip and probably trained with it long enough to be accurate to the point of hitting the eyes of his target. Who needs powerful magical limbs when you can have a whip? Glad to see the casual stupidity of animals displayed in fantasy media as well. As if that growl by the dragon would achieve anything other than agitating the multitude of beasts surrounding it. P.S. Where the F is Puck? Reply. Anonymous says. August 22, 2020 at 3:47 p.m. Jesus Christ, who hurt you? Reply. Anonymous says. September 6, 2020 at 6:47 p.m. Who hurt you? Reply. Blank says. August 16, 2020 at 9:02 p.m. I always like Beatrice and Subaru moment, but what the hell is going on? I think it's Sage. Reply. Anonymous says. September 1, 2020 at 5:11 p.m. Man slightly frowning face. Reply. Leave a reply. Your email address will not be published. Comment. Name. Email. Website. Language. More language options coming soon. Recent posts. Arc 6, Chapter 79, Ready Steady Go. 2 days ago. Arc 6, Chapter 78, The Four Corners. 3 days ago. Arc 6, Chapter 76, The Hell Bearing the Name of Oneself. 2 months ago. Arc 6, Chapter 67, Little King. 2 months ago. Arc 6, Chapter 66, Second Chance Toward the Denouement. 2 months ago. Re, 0 if stories. Re, Abereru if, Wrath Root. Re, Rem if, Sloth Root. Re, Ayamatsu if, Pride Root. Re, Harem if Rem part, Lust Root. Re, Kazanaru if, Greed Root. Re, Tsujihaku if, Gluttony Root. Follow us on Twitter. Meta. Register. Log in. Entries feed. Comments feed. WordPress.org. Re0 Copyright Tappei Nagatsuki Witch Cult Translations Copyright 2019 Header Art Source Theme, Placid by Paragon Themes.